It's hard to imagine what a whole food diet would look like, since our grocery stores are 73% ultra processed foods. Our society is plagued with easy and accessible processed food. We call it junk food for a reason. Ultra processed foods lack the nutrients necessary to maintain good health. However, they are packed with ingredients our body doesn't need and are actually extremely harmful to our health. What does a minimally processed diet consist of? An unprocessed or minimally processed diet can be determined using the NOVA scale, which places foods into specific classifications based on how processed they are. Group 1 is unprocessed or minimally processed foods. These are what you should be eating most, as they do not include any additives or preservatives. They contain the necessary fats, essential amino acids, and complex carbohydrates that help maintain stable blood glucose levels. Group 1 includes fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, poultry, and fish. Group 2 is processed culinary ingredients, which are healthy in small quantities. Some foods in this group, like olive oil, can be very beneficial to health, since it contains antioxidants that reduce oxidative damage caused by free radicals. Some examples of processed culinary ingredients include olive oil, butter, honey, maple syrup, and salt. Group 3 is processed foods. These can be a part of a healthy diet in very small amounts. Foods in this category are often canned or packaged, and are foods from Group 1 processed with foods from Group 2. Some examples of processed foods include canned fruits and vegetables, cheese, some packaged bread, wine and beer. These foods are processed in order to enhance flavor and shelf life for convenience. Group 4 is ultra-processed foods. They should be avoided as often as possible. These contain an excessive amount of simple carbohydrates, which spike blood glucose levels, unhealthy fats in excessive proportions, and lack many key nutrients our bodies require. The point of this video is to assess how processed food affects glycemic control. I will do this by describing what glucose spikes are, why they are harmful. Then I will review an article showing the nutrient distribution of unprocessed versus processed foods and its effects on health, coming to my own conclusion about why processed foods affect glycemic control. What is a glucose spike? A glucose spike is when our blood glucose levels rise above normal, which varies person to person, but it is recommended to remain between 80 and 130 milligrams per deciliter before a meal and below 180 milligrams per deciliter after a meal. When we consume food, our body breaks down carbohydrates into glucose, which our brain, nervous system, and cells require in order to function. Monosaccharides and disaccharides, also referred to as simple carbohydrates, are made of either one sugar unit or two sugar units. This means our body can absorb them much quicker than polysaccharides, which are called complex carbohydrates. The quicker the carbohydrates are digested, the more rapid the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream will be, leading to a quicker and higher glucose spike. Why are glucose spikes harmful? The rise of blood glucose stimulates the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin helps move glucose from the blood into cells. It can be used for energy or stores glycogen in the liver and muscles for later use. There is a limited amount of glucose that can be stored as glycogen. Excess glucose is converted into fat through a process called lipogenesis. Excess fat can lead to a buildup of free fatty acids in the blood, which interfere with the cell's ability to utilize insulin. This is called insulin resistance and leads to high blood sugar levels, eventually resulting in prediabetes followed by diabetes. A study published in 2021 by Springer Nature used the NOVA classification scale to establish the difference between minimally processed foods, and ultra processed foods, looking at the proportion of energy from each of these groups in 1,774 French adults, assessing diet quality and risk of cardiometabolic death. They found that animal protein intake and plant protein diversity were positively associated with minimally processed diet, whereas a processed diet was also positively associated with animal protein intake, but negatively associated with plant protein diversity. They found that a minimally processed diet decreases the risk of cardiometabolic disease by 30%, while a processed diet increases the risk by 11%, and an ultra processed diet by 42%. In conclusion, there was little to no plant diversity in the processed and ultra processed diets, meaning less fiber intake. Fiber plays a crucial role in glycemic control, specifically soluble fiber, which dissolves in water, creating a viscous gel that slows digestion by lining the stomach. This slows the gastric emptying of carbohydrates into the small intestine, in turn creating a slower and lower glucose spike. In conclusion, we see that processed food is everywhere, and it is harmful because it contains lots of simple carbohydrates as well as many harmful ingredients like saturated and trans fat. Processed foods also contain little to no fiber, which is vital for glycemic control. We can observe that processed foods and ultra processed foods have a significant effect on glycemic control, which may result in many health conditions, like an increased risk of cardiometabolic death, prediabetes, as well as type 1 and type 2 diabetes. An unprocessed and minimally processed diet is easily achievable if you pay attention to what foods you're purchasing and where you purchase them. Consuming mainly foods in the NOVA scale Group 1 and Group 2 will decrease the risk of diabetes and other health issues. On a minimally processed diet, you will have less glucose spikes, therefore more stable energy throughout the day, no more afternoon crashes, less cravings, and you will feel fuller for longer.